we had established a policy. The music must accommodate the family, not the family accommodate the music. Because when we're old and decrepit and
like we are now,
well, getting that way, and the music business gatekeepers are not going to be the ones that come and check on us. Or as our son said, Dad, we're going to make sure you get the creamy Alpo and not the dry.
Welcome to the Christian Music Archive podcast, conversations about Christ, community, and music. I'm your host, Dave Maurer. Each week I chat with a musical guest who is listed on the pages of the Christian Music Archive. There are thousands of creative men and women who have helped shape the soundtrack of the Christian faith, and we get to hear their stories, learn about how Christ has made a difference in their life, and hopefully, along the way, we'll learn how we can be a better part of our community. Today I'm welcoming to the podcast the husband and wife team of Steve and Annie Chapman. Christian music enthusiasts will recognize Steve and Annie as a vocal recording duo from the early 80s, but before that they were both in the pioneering CCM group Dogwood. But what many may not realize is that they've continued to record and have around 20 albums to their name. They're also seasoned authors, releasing more than 30 books between the two of them, covering topics from marriage and parenting to hunting and character development. We got a lot to talk about, I'm sure. So welcome with me to the podcast, Annie and Steve.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dave.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah. Welcome from Nashville.
And you're welcome to come here and make yourself at home.
Well, I'm sure that we could probably spend 2 or 3 podcast episodes talking about all that you guys have done over the past, do I dare say how long?
Since the 1900s, Dave.
There you go. Yeah, that was last century. Why don't we get started with how you guys met? I read a little bit about this, and I like the story. I think our listeners would enjoy that, too.
Well, we met in the great state of West Virginia. I was born in Chapmanville. I mean, do the roots run deep or what?
Wow.
And Annie was living in a little community called Southside near the town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where my folks moved when I was 10 years old. Dad took a job at a nearby manufacturing plant, and we ended up there in Point Pleasant. And in 1963, I went to junior high school. And in the halls of junior high school in the 8th grade, I met this girl named Ann Williamson. She's a country girl, and from a dairy farm in Southside. And that's where we met, but we didn't really get to know each other until high school. So,
yeah, technically we went to junior high together, but realistically we became friends in high school. We were in choir together, and I had this, I had heard that Steve liked to hunt, and, he had caught my eye, and I mean, how could I resist this adorable, 13-year-old? And so my brother had killed an 11-point buck. So I just made sure that Steve was in earshot when I was describing, and he showed some interest in me, believe it or not. Well, in my farm. Dad's farm. And I told him that if he came up to see me, that my brother would take him to that deer stand where he caught that bagged that 11-point. And so I didn't know that he was going to come in at 3:00 in the morning.
Oh goodness!
And I didn't tell my brother he was coming, and my dad met him at the front door in his underwear and a ball bat. So,
well, he was in the underwear and ball bat.
Yeah, my dad was in his underwear. So he got my brother out of bed, and my brother took him to the deer stand in like sub-zero weather. I think it was just revenge for waking him up, and left him there about 2 or 3 hours before daylight. Yep. And he wasn't sure he'd be able to find our farm in the dark. So he came real early. So you were in the deer stand by 3:30, 4:00?
It was probably 4:30, but it didn't get daylight till 7. I thought I was going to die there.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
He didn't get the deer, but he caught my attention.
I got the other deer, the other one that you spell the other way.
You got the deer that makes the most important life change.
Yeah, the deer that cooked the deer.
So you guys hung out in high school. When did you actually start singing together?
Well, like Annie said a while ago, we were in choir together in high school, and that's where I first heard her voice. I went, "Whoa, that gal can sing!" And
well, Steve was in a three. It was kind of like Kingston Trio.
Oh, sure.
Called the Mastermen. Or was it was it 4 of you or 3 of you?
There was 4 of us.
Of you, yeah.
You take a stick of bumba, you take a stick of, you know those songs.
Yeah.
So cute.
So we met there in the choir room.
But his dad was a pastor, and so I would go and sing for his dad. I mean, I really had more of a relationship with these folks than I did with him at one point. So I would do solo work for his dad, and if he did a revival, I would go and sing. And so we knew each other. And then on my 21st birthday, somehow we were hanging out together, and we took off. And this was before cell phones. We didn't tell our parents where we were going. We went to see the Oak Ridge Boys in Charleston, West Virginia, and it was 2:00 in the morning, and I wasn't home. And I thought, well, I'm 21. Who cares? And my mom and dad cared because I was living at home. So anyway, we have quite the history together.
Yeah, back up a little bit. I went off to college, to Glenville State College. Annie went to Moody Bible Institute, and then I went into the Navy, and Annie went to West Virginia University. So we parted ways after high school, and then in 1974, I landed in Nashville. Just interested in music, had no direction, just wanted to be in the music city. And a friend of mine, Ron Elder, came down, and we eventually formed the beginnings of the group Dogwood. And Annie was, it was me and Ron and 2 other guys, and we were living in this apartment, all 4 of us, and our pastor came in one day. We were all single, and he gathered us in the living room, and he prayed over us, and it may have been the odor and the mess in the house, but he said, "Oh God, give these men wives." And when he said that, Dave, I said to myself, I didn't say it out loud, I thought he should mind his own business. I'm not interested in that. And then the Lord started stirring that prayer in my heart. And I said, okay, I want to be obedient. And if marriage is for me, and by then I was 21?
No, 23.
And by then, I was probably old enough to settle down, but I started thinking, Lord, if you want me to marry someone, who would it be? And that's when Annie's name came to my mind. Back then we called her Ann. There's a reason she's called Annie, but I started thinking about Ann Williamson, and the group split up for a couple of weeks to pray about the direction of Dogwood. And I went to West Virginia, and Annie happened to be home.
I was working in Philadelphia in an inner city ministry. So it would have been a really difficult summer. So in September, I decided to come home for a couple of weeks and see my folks. And when I got there, lo and behold, Steve Chapman came from Nashville to visit his folks and to pray about this group. And we saw each other, and our friendship was renewed. And we took a drive one day, and he told me about the prayer his pastor had prayed. And he said, and I think perhaps you were the answer to that prayer.
Wow.
And I said, no way, Bubba. I am not getting married. I basically had a great disdain and hatred for men and children. And so I didn't particularly, I was a Christian, but I'd been influenced by the feminist movement, and I didn't want that life. And I told him, I said, no, it's not me for sure. And 4 months later, we were married.
Oh, wow. Well, that's quite the statement. And we'll probably get into this a little bit later, but God obviously changed your heart Annie, because you have quite a passion for children and family now.
Yeah, I don't hate them anymore.
So when you guys got together and Annie joined Dogwood, was that still while you guys were doing? Weren't you guys the opening band for like the coffee house there in Nashville? What was it, Koinonia or something like that?
Yeah, Koinonia Coffee House was where Dogwood got its start. By the time March of 1975 came around, Dogwood was ingrained in Koinonia. We were the house band, you might say.
Okay. And
Annie was still in West Virginia, and I invited her to come down.
Well,
and
your timelines. We were married in March.
Right, 75, but I'm talking about before.
In November.
In November of 74, I invited her to come down.
That's right.
And everything I promised her musically fell apart before she got here. But she told her dad, what was it she said?
Well, I was coming to sing backup for this tour with this famous artist, and Steve's band was going to be her backup, you know, and her music and all that. Well, the day I came down to Nashville for that, everything just fizzled and fell apart, and the tour was canceled and everything. So Steve was dreading telling me that the reason he had lured me to Nashville was not going to happen. And I said, well, I didn't come because you invited me. I came because I thought God wanted me to. Because when I left home, I told my dad, I said, I may be gone 2 weeks. I may be gone 2 months. I may never come home. And that was 46 years ago. And I never went home.
Wow. Wow. And does Dad still meet you at the gate with his baseball bat, Steve?
He would if he was alive.
He ended up loving him. And Mom, she had a few choice words to say about him showing up, but she came around too.
Dogwood started in late 74. Annie joined in 1 week after we got married.
Yeah.
One of the guys dropped out, one of the original guys, and Annie stepped in. And
I stepped in temporarily 46 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, and then I did that for a couple of years. Then when we had our son Nathan, I told Steve, I said, the road is no place for a child, and you go on and I'll stay home. And that didn't quite pan out that way.
No.
So did the pastor's prayer come to fruition for the other guys too?
Every
did.
one of them.
And anybody that's single listening, he's not in the business of those prayers for everybody, but he saw a need in our lives. And it's been a good run. Been good.
What God puts together is a good thing, isn't it?
It really is.
So Dogwood was together until the late 70s, and then you guys decided to go off as a duo then. What was kind of the transitionary between that phase of life?
Well, Annie, the way she put it, when she dropped out of Dogwood, she said, I'm accepting a promotion to motherhood.
Right. Consequently,
though, that left me and Ron, as a duet, as Dogwood, and we sounded awful as a duet. Our songs were written not for duet but for trio, and so we were in Monroe, Louisiana, singing, and there was a band that warmed us up called East of the Altar, and the band was 4 single guys, and Ron and I really liked them and liked how they sounded. And we invited them to come to Nashville and be Dogwood as a band. And at one point we were 7 pieces, 6 on stage and a sound man. And that continued for almost 2 years. But what happened, Dave, is while the band was in progress, I was becoming a stranger at home. We were gone 20, 22 days a month trying to keep 7 guys, food on the table.
Sure.
and responding really to invitations. I thought Dogwood had a good ministry going. And yet I was feeling really lost as a dad and a husband, because I was becoming a stranger at home, as I mentioned. And I came home one weekend after a trip, and Nathan was about 2 years old, maybe 3.
Yeah, maybe 3.5.
And so he did something behaviorally after about an hour at home that I didn't approve of, and I disciplined him. And he didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, he pointed his little finger at me and he said, "Old man, why don't you get in that motorhome and go take another trip?"
Oh, wow.
And that was the moment I realized I'm losing this kid. I'm losing my credibility as a father.
Yeah.
So literally in that moment, Dave, my heart left Dogwood, but it took 6 months for that to come to fruition. And in that 6-month period, when we were traveling, I was so much thought put on family. I started writing songs about family. And I'm a songwriter that responds to the things that move me. And so by the time the 6 month was over and the Dogwood ended, I had this list of songs about family that I thought, I felt like the Lord was leading me and us into that field of trying to encourage families through music. It's a very unique way to teach about the family. And and I like to never convince Annie. She did not want to go back out on the road.
Well, I have a little story about that. Steve said he wanted the two of us to travel. Well, by that time we had our daughter. So that was, a baby and a toddler.
Yeah.
And if I thought the road wasn't good for one, what do you think I thought about for two?
Right.
And I just said, no, you go be a solo act and I'll stay home with the kids. Well, he didn't tell me this. He never mentioned it again to me, but he prayed about it. Mm. And so on one of these trips, coming near the end of this 6-month period, he was gone for a week. And the first night that he was gone, I had a dream. And in the dream, I dreamed that I was unfaithful to him. And I thought, oh, wow, what did I watch?
Yeah.
Why would I do that? Second night, the same dream. I was unfaithful to him. Third night, okay, now I'm getting upset. Fourth night, Lord, what is in my heart? Are you telling me I have an adulterous heart? Why am I dreaming these dreams? Fifth night, same thing. Sixth night, I don't want to go to sleep. I am destroyed. I am so upset. What is wrong with me that I have this same dream? And finally, in desperation, I cried out, what is wrong, Lord? And God spoke to me in that still small voice that, a couple of handfuls of times, it's him. And said, you're unfaithful because you won't do what I've called you to do. And when Steve came home, I told him, okay, I'll travel with you, but we have to take the kids.
Yeah.
And so and this is the brilliance of all of this. If Steve had talked me into doing that with with an infant and toddler, if he had talked me into going on the road with him, every time something went wrong, I would have blamed him. Mm. Every time it would have been too hard or somebody got sick or something, Steve would, but because he would not talk me into it, but he prayed about it. Then when things went wrong, it wasn't me and Steve duking it out. It was me and God. Because it was God that had called me, not Steve. Steve never pulled the submission card. He never said, we could do this. He never tried to make it sound better than it was going to be, because it was hard traveling with little ones.
Oh, sure.
It was God that said, if you don't do this, you're not being faithful to what I've called you to do. So that we did. We packed up the youngins, and boy, it's been a wonderful life. The kids raised on the road, and our goal was that our kids would never despise the ministry. So we never talked bad about anybody. If something bad happened, if we didn't get paid, if somebody did, the kids were not privy to that. We really protected them And so they grew up and each other. We tried to be that for each other too, having a positive attitude. So it turned out to be a wonderful thing, and we've done it. And this coming Sunday, we do it again. We've done it a long time.
Well, and Nathan and Heidi, right, are your kids' names?
Right.
They've released some stuff of their own, both books and music as well. So they kind of learned from what you have said as an example.
Yeah, Nathan he runs with the big dogs here in Nashville, and Heidi probably has the best voice of anyone in the family, and she's a homeschool mom and an incredible artist. She does just beautiful, fine art, and they're both very talented, but I think they grew up with very good attitudes and good memories of life on the road.
Well, I know a lot of our listeners will have lost track of you around the mid-'80s, because I think that's when you decided to go independent, right? And you started staying closer to home. Was that because the kids were of the age that they needed to be home, or what was the transition point there?
Well,
we wanted to do the music we wanted to do.
Yeah. We didn't stay home so much. We just stepped outside of the box of the mainstream Christian music, because, Dave, we were singing songs that would not fit commercially, with a record company. We were doing stuff like Her Daddy's Love, which was a song that actually ended up on the Turn Your Heart Toward Home film series,
okay,
with Focus on the Family.
Right.
And we were doing Daddy, Please Find a Reason. We found that with songs about family, they're either funny or really sad, and hardly anything in between. And so commercially, they just didn't fit. And and we accepted that. But what that seemed to have done, it expanded our audience in terms of church function, because when Focus on the Family gave us a platform, which we were very grateful for, when people wanted to have an event for family, a lot of times they would think of us, and because it included music and instruction. And so we cultivated that, and accepted the fact that we probably would never chart, but our concern was hearts, not charts. And not that charts are bad. That's not a bad thing. It's just that wasn't our focus.
What Jim Dobson did for us in one broadcast, what we could not have done in 20 years.
Wow.
We at the time we were with a record company when we started that. So he identified our music as music for the family. And it was, in fact, the first time we went and did a chapel service for Dr. Dobson. He thought we had written the songs specifically because we were there. He didn't know that is actually what we did all the time.
That's your thing, yeah.
We finally said, we sing what you say. This is what we sing. And that friendship and partnership included him including us on the film series, which I think it's probably incalculable how many people have actually seen that, even though we were a minute part of it. To be able to be a part of that was it was just a blessing from God, and we love them and appreciate them so much.
Just a quick insight into the level of influence that Jim had at that time. We didn't know at the end of the broadcast. What we did is we filmed a chapel service with him.
Okay.
And
recorded
the audio. And they used that as a broadcast. And at the end of the broadcast, I think they used like 4 or 5 songs. We didn't know he was going to say, and if you're interested in having these folks at your church, give this person a call. And we were sitting here in Nashville listening to the program as it aired. First time we heard it, we were excited. And then we heard that at the end, we went, uh-oh. So I immediately called the guy that was scheduling us down in Mobile, Alabama, and it took me 3 hours to get into the phone was busy.
Wow.
And I finally got through and I said, Curtis, what's going on? He said, I want to know what's going on. he said, we've booked a year of concerts here this morning.
Wow.
And so we have so much thanks to give to Jim and to Jim and Shirley. So, we're very grateful for that.
Well, the thing that comes to my mind is that if we follow God's path, which what you were singing about, what you were writing about was following his call in your life, he's going to pave the way in ways that we couldn't have even imagined doing on our own.
That's exactly the point I was heading to. And I wanted to say that especially for the young musician who's trying to, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I get into that? You just follow. And we have been followers all of these years. And sometimes God makes followers leaders. And, we wanted others to pick up the mantle and sing about family. We haven't seen many do it, but we've seen a few. And yeah, you're right. We just follow, and somehow you look back through time and you go, that was a good trip.
I think there were 2 times I look back and I think we could have made a choice that would have changed the direction that we went. One was Steve wrote a song that it was the company that we were with really believed it was a country hit and wanted Steve to let that song be released. And something kept, Steve just believed that he really didn't trust. I don't even I can't even understand it. But
the song.
Don't tell the song.
No, I won't tell the song, but I will tell you that it had some questionable.
That's why it was going to be a success.
Scenery in it that it had a little risque side. I don't know what got into me to write a song like that,
but it was a great song. But Steve held it back and said, "No, I can't do that. I can't put my name on it." Even though he wrote it. And then around the same time, our record company had us scheduled a meeting on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. And we were to meet with this talent agent. They were going to sign us as and they had really big names. And they were willing to take us on. They came to our concert and they said, yeah. And they said, we're going to put you on, I think at the time it was like the Phil Donahue show, and we're going to have you on Good Morning America. And they went through all these promises that they were going to do. And our record company was all in, that was going to help them. But there was a check, and we knew that was not the direction we were to take. And we turned that down, and we made our record company really mad. But we knew in our hearts. And I think those 2 decisions, it kept us probably more low key, and we weren't the success that we could have been maybe. But that was around this same time that Jim Dobson asked us to come sing the first time on Focus on the Family. And I believe had we done those other 2 things, that would never have happened. And we believe that ultimately the direction that we ended up taking was the one we were supposed to go, even though we'd probably reached a lot less people in some respect. But I don't know, we look back and just kind of sigh and think, thank you, Lord.
Yeah.
I'm glad we hoed this 2 little rows that you gave us in this world. And that's okay. Our garden's not as big as somebody else's, but we hoed the rows that you told us to, and we feel good about it.
Well, this brings up a really interesting question, because as musicians are trying to further their careers, and they have these, for all intents and purposes, very incredible opportunities to maybe make a big buck, maybe make a big career splash. What was it specifically that helped you guys realize that this is not the path that God has for us? I mean, that had to have been quite a wrestling match, I would imagine.
Well, we had established a policy we agreed on this policy. That is that the music must accommodate the family, not the family accommodate the music. Because when we're old and decrepit and
like we are now,
well, getting that way, and you know, the music business gatekeepers are not going to be the ones that come and check on us or bring us a glass of water, or, you know, or as our son said, you know, Dad, we're going to make sure you get the creamy Alpo and not the dry.
He said, I'm going to take good care of you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nathan.
Yeah, thanks.
There's one more example that is kind of along this line. We had made the decision, because we traveled with kids, that we would take the month of August off because it was hot. It was, you know, we just were going to do it. And the August 1st to the end, that month belonged to our kids, and we were not going to take them out, and we weren't going to travel. Well, something happened, and we get this call from our booking agent that this opportunity that was just absolutely beyond, we were going to teach the teachers, and we were going to have this big platform. If we would, and we go, oh, wow, this sounds fabulous. When? Yeah. And he said, August the 4th. And we go, oh, well, that's a problem, because August belongs to our kids. Well, why can't you just add 4 more days into September? Yeah. Just back it up 4 days. You know, come on. And we just said, we made a commitment. It's August 1st. We can't do it. And they never asked us again. I think we made some real enemies at that point. But that's when we said, when this is all over, who do we want to impress? Them or our kids? Who's going to remember that we didn't do this on August the 4th? Yeah. Them? Nah, they're going to go on to other. Our kids will know they are more important than this opportunity. And it was stuff like that happened along the way that I think there were tests in a way, but we kept coming back to, all right, who are you going to please? Because we knew the music business is not pleasable. Mm. I mean, you're going to be replaced, as we see, you know, every dog has its day. There's always going to be someone that comes along that deserves that spot more than you do. So if you lived to please the music business, you end up with nothing. Mm-hmm.
Every Dogwood has its day.
Yeah.
And sometimes they come back around for a revisit, but
we haven't talked about this stuff in what, 30, 40 years.
Oh, well.
So it's fine.
It's still on the tip of our tongue. So.
Well, it's in our minds, but we don't talk about it.
Well, but it's the passion that God has used to focus your ministry, because like you said, Steve, there was that point when you were talking with Nathan about, you know, just get back on the bus and go away. That was that flip of a switch that says, I know what my purpose is.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I don't regret that choice. Commercially, you know, a songwriter like me, we will admit, you know, I would love to have had some, you know, more activity in the chart world, but I don't know. Some flowers weren't designed to bloom in the sun. Yeah. So I'm happy to have been in the shadows.
Well, at some point you guys transitioned. I mean, I know you still do music and you still record music, but you transitioned to writing books. Was that a natural progression, or how did that come about?
Well, that really came about, some of it, you know, because of Focus on the Family, that we were asked to do different articles, and we were asked to do an article for Decision magazine. And so I think I took it on. I was the writer at that point. I've been left in the dust by Steve long ago, but at the time I was the writer. And an acquisitions editor from Bethany House read that article and contacted us and said, we want to do a book. There's a book in you. And I go, no. You know, 100 words and that's it. And he came back for about 3 or 4 years. He would come every year and he would say, there's a book in there. I think you should do a book. And And finally we go, really? You think? And so it was Bethany House Publishers. But we did a couple of 3 books with them. And then Steve wrote A Look at Life from a Deer Stand about hunting. You know, that hunter that I met in junior high school, well, I'm glad he hunts now, because Steve he will never tell you, but he is a best-selling author. He has sold gazillions of books. And at one point, he was the highest selling author in that genre of anyone. So he's done himself. You've done at least 30 books yourself. I've done maybe 12 or something, but Steve left me long ago with the writing.
Well, the last thing I found published was that, Steve, you've sold over 1 million books.
Right.
Has that opened up different avenues of ministry, or has it just expanded upon the existing ministry that you had?
No, one of the unique things that has come out of the people who have a passion for the outdoors in the church has been a lot of people call them wild game dinners, sportsmen's events, outdoor themed kind of things. And I've ended up on as keynote at many of these through the years as a result of the books. But I don't abandon music to do it. I use music in the presentation along with video clips, because men are very visual. Most of the people that attend these things are men. Mm-hmm. But it's opened up another world musically for me. But since March, they haven't happened because of the lockdown. But I got some things coming up in 21 that I hope will happen. But I always tell the sponsor, I feel like a pig in mud at these things. You know, a pig is happiest in mud. And I just enjoy sharing my stories, and 95 to 99% of the time they want me to share the gospel. And I use hunt speak to present the gospel. And sportsmen are very emotional people, so they appreciate the music, the emotion in the music and the stories and everything. So that's been a very enjoyable component of what we've done through the years.
I'm always interested in, and I think our listeners are too, in hearing the stories about how we came to know Christ as our personal Savior. A lot of people call it their testimony. And Steve, I know you grew up as a preacher's kid, but at some point that became your own testimony, and you had to come to that point of saying, Jesus is a relationship I want to be in. Would you guys mind telling your testimonies?
Yeah, I did grow up as a preacher's kid, Pentecostal. My mom and dad were saved, met Christ when they were, right after they were married, actually. Mom was the first to come to Christ, and then Dad immediately after. And by then they had my sister and me. And Dad accepted the call to be a preacher. He was more of an evangelist than a pastor, but he pastored for over 40 years. But when growing up in their home, I always heard about Christ, and they were very diligent, and they were devoted to making sure my sister and me knew the Lord. I knew about Christ, but I didn't know him. And I liken that to the woman at the well, when she went to town after meeting Jesus, and she said, he told me everything he did. I told me everything I've done. And the Samaritans said, we heard about him through you, but now we really know because we met him. And, he came and stayed a couple of days with them. And they said, now we really know. We heard of him through you, but we met him, and now we know. And that in 1974, in January of 74, I made a conscious commitment to follow Christ. And by then I was in Nashville and floating around Koinonia and trying to find my way there. But And I got baptized by the pastor at the church we were going to. And I'd been baptized before, Dave, at Pentecostal youth camps.
Mm-hmm.
The only chance that any of us had to swim was when we got baptized. So every year I'd get baptized in the pond out behind the camp. So I'd been baptized several times, but I didn't really understand what I was doing.
Right.
And until it's March 3rd, 1974. I call it my death anniversary. Mm. And I made a statement of what had happened in my heart by being baptized. And so I started following Christ, and I had not really understood the word of God. And the church I was going to was a Church of Christ, and they are very word-oriented people. The study of the word was very important at Belmont Church. But what happened was the Holy Spirit lit a fire to that word in our hearts, and the word and the study of it became very important to us. And that's when I started to grow in Christ. Mm-hmm. That was in 74, and I'm still walking with it. Very cool. Annie, what about you?
Well, I wouldn't say I wasn't raised in an overtly Christian home, but we went to church, and the church I went to basically taught that you had to. It was a works. If you're good, then you get to go to heaven, and if you're not, then you don't. So there was no truth. I didn't hear the gospel. I didn't really know it. Well, I was going to, I was in high school, and I was in choir, and the choir director wanted me to, I took no college prep courses. Everything was general. I was going to stay on the farm, and I was going to take the farm over from my dad, and I was going to work the farm. I had no desire to go to college, no desire to even leave that little community. That was going to be my world, was I was going to work on the farm. And but the choir director at the high school, he said, I think you should go to school, and I think you should study music. And so he said, my sister went to Moody Bible Institute, and they have a really good music program. I think that's where you should go. So for some strange reason, that I just kind of did what he told me to do. And so I applied to Moody, didn't realize there was a 2-year waiting period to get into that school. I get the packet of what I have to have, and it says I needed a testimony of a conversion testimony. Well, my sister, she liked, she was a writer, and she liked Edgar Allan Poe, and she liked all this kind of stuff. And I said, hey, I'm supposed to have a conversion story. Would you write me up something? She did this complete fabricated, fictitious testimonial of salvation. And I don't even know if I read it or not. But she just, waxed eloquently, and I put it in the packet and sent it in. And none of this was in my mind of what was really going on. God wanted me to go to Moody.
Yeah.
They accepted that. And then my sister said, I know a lady who she likes to help people go to Christian colleges. I'm going to tell her about you. So it ended up, I was accepted to Moody 2 weeks before it started. A lady paid all of my expenses, bought my books and my airplane, everything. It was just like it was like put in my lap. I didn't even know really what was happening.
Yeah.
And so I went to Moody, and the first week I was there, I heard the gospel, and all these kids that had been raised in all these Baptist churches and Bible churches and had heard the gospel a million times, a dozen ways which way. I was sitting there. I was like someone from from Africa going, what? I've never heard this before. And I was absolutely, my mouth just gaping open. I'd never heard the good news, and just was thrilled with it, and got saved. And just God brought me to Moody Bible Institute so I could hear the gospel. And I gave my heart to Jesus, and it was daylight. It was going from darkness to light.
Wow.
So I'm so grateful for my sister's ability to spin a yarn. And we lied through our teeth to get into that Bible school.
And yet again, it's the way that God uses situations and circumstances to put us exactly where he needs us to be.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
I couldn't understand why those kids at Moody, they seemed bored in chapel service.
Mm-hmm.
And when they heard "Great is thy faithfulness," and you hear that just ringing through that big auditorium, I'd never heard that in my life.
Wow.
I'd never heard any. I was raised Methodist. I'd never heard any of those songs that, and can it be that I should gain an entrance to, I could not get over what I was hearing. It was like I had died and gone to heaven.
Yeah. And those two commitments that you guys made at that point have now paved the way for this ministry that you guys have to families and to spread the gospel and help people understand the importance of having a godly family as the root of life.
Right.
Yeah. And now we have 6 grandchildren that are just, I mean, they're our little missionary. They're our little mission field, and they all love the Lord, and they've given their heart to Jesus. In fact, Natalie, when she was about 3, she was 4, and she asked her mom, and her mom talked to her. That she'd been raised knowing Jesus, and so she wanted to give her heart to Jesus. And the first thing she did when she prayed the prayer to receive Jesus, she said, "Now we need to go get George saved." And he was 2 years old. So we said, well, let's give George a little time.
Well, one of the things that we always do with our podcast is we also send out a newsletter every Saturday asking folks to pray for artists. How can we be praying for you in these weeks and months ahead?
Well,
First of all, thank you for that offer. We're
I think your mom,
Yeah.
is our greatest burden.
Dave, we when the lockdown happened, we go, what are we going to do? Again, God, he arranges things. My mom is 90, will be 93 in February, and 24/7 care. She lives with my sister. My sister is it's very taxing on her. So Annie and I go help, and they're 90 miles away. If we were traveling like we would have been this time last year, it'd been very difficult to be to lend assistance to my sister, who again needs that help. So we see that is a valuable outcome of the lockdown for us. You can pray for my mom, Lillian, and you can pray for my sister. You can pray for our kids, and we're praying a lot right now for our nation.
Yeah.
And our grandkids are inheriting a nation that doesn't look a whole lot like the one Annie and I grew up in, and that deeply concerns us. We pray for the church. Heard a statistic the other day that 45% of churchgoers probably will not go back. That's scary.
Two things really stand out from our conversation with Steve and Annie today. First is the fact that when we follow God's leading, He is going to take us on a ride that we could never have imagined on our own. He's going to make connections with people and open doors. He'll take care of us. We just need to be faithful and obedient to His leading. And I also appreciate the Chapmans' commitment to family. The investment in our kids, both in priority and in spiritual teaching, is probably the most important thing we can do with our time. Now, for me, it's easy to focus on all the things I have to do. Work projects, things at church, even making this podcast. But where does all of that stack up in light of eternity? Am I more interested in putting effort into my routines than into my kids my wife, or my family? What a great reminder to make sure that my priorities are in order. Again, thanks to Steve and Annie Chapman for this fun conversation, and thanks to you too. I'm grateful that we get to spend time together each week. Since you are a regular listener to this podcast, would you mind rating it on your favorite podcast app? Reviews and ratings really help spread the word so that other folks can hear about these conversations. Thanks so much. Well, if you have comments or questions for me, please feel free to drop me a direct message on any of the social media platforms. Just look for @CCM on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Patreon. Or you can also drop me a note at the website christianmusicarchive.com. Well, I'm really looking forward to our time together next week. I've got another great conversation with one of the musicians you'll find on the pages of the Christian Music Archive. So, until then, remember this: God loves you. In fact, He's crazy about you.